Okay, it looks like we're on the record and the recording's going here. Good morning, everybody. We're here at the August meeting of the Board's Enforcement Oversight Committee. The date today is August 12th, 2026. The time now is 9:05 a.m. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And Stephanie, can you give us a roll call for attendance?
Lori?
Here.
Kathy?
Here.
And Gary?
Here.
Excellent. Forms verified. Staff in attendance today, we have myself, Chad Cook. We have Administrative Specialist Stephanie Kahn and Investigator Dan Murphy. The first order of business today is to approve the Enforcement Oversight Committee meeting minutes from last month's meeting. That's the July 15th, 2026 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as written or any discussion?
So moved. I'll second.
Lori with the second, and let's do a quick roll call for adoption.
Lori?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
And the minutes are adopted. Okay. First thing on the agenda today, unfortunately, is an administrator allegation that I brought before you folks. This concerns an appraisal that was done, that we were made aware of as a part of a different investigation. The complainant submitted the document or this appraisal in this administrator allegation, basically to establish that a separate appraisal was drastically undervalued for certain reasons that they stated in the allegation report. Now, in looking over the appraisal itself, Investigator Murphy noted a few issues here. It's pretty well detailed in the allegation without reading it verbatim here. Are there any questions on this administrator allegation?
No, I think we've been pretty well briefed on this one, Chad.
Yeah. So, it would appear that this appraisal was the complainant's basis in a separate case for filing a complaint on a different appraiser who, by all rights, there's no perfect appraisal, but I think if we were to judge side by side, one looks a little bit more credible than the other, if you're asking me. So unless there's any other discussion, is there a motion to open this allegation report?
I'll motion to open this allegation report.
I'll
I'll
second.
second that.
Okay, Gary, I'll second that. I'll third it.
All right, let's just for posterity's sake, let's do a roll call for approval.
Lori?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
And Gary?
Yes.
All right, motion carries, and I will go ahead and get this process started, and we'll get the appraiser notified that there is an allegation report open. And I'm going to go ahead and pass the meeting to Dan. I think he's got a case to talk with us about today.
Yes, I've got a case. It's 222507. You all had a chance to look over the allegation and the report and my PCR. And does anybody have any questions or anything you'd like to discuss about the case before we go? Kathy, you smiling?
I have lots of questions on this one.
Oh, yeah?
My very first question is, was this an allegation in value complaint only? And if so, is it our process, if a complaint comes in based solely on a value issue, that we automatically investigate it?
No. So what happens is when an allegation comes in, and you're right, the allegation report is pretty short and succinct. Its appraisal came in at $75,000 under listed price. So that's something that we look at, and we just had a discussion with the appraiser that's the subject of today's case yesterday, and we hardly ever have any issues or talk to people about what their value is or what their adjustment values are, or anything like that. We're more interested in how they got there and what information did they analyze in coming up with those conclusions, and where is that documented for support. So we look at the allegation, and then beyond that, we're bound by the ASC to look at the rest of the report for use PAP compliance.
So if an allegation comes in that's solely based on value somebody says, I don't like the value, then we're bound to investigate it, period.
No, we're bound to look at the rest of the appraisal report for USPAP compliance. And if there's any,
well, I guess that's kind of my question was, so if somebody says, I don't like the value of my appraisal report, I'm going to file a complaint with the state, then we are bound to then review that appraisal report for USPAP.
Yes.
Okay.
and in fact, the vast majority of the investigations that we do are related to a complainant's issue with the value in one way or another.
Agreed, but typically, at least what I've seen so far is there's always been something else, right? So in here, the allegation says that the complainant alleged that they provided other comparable sales and the appraiser didn't respond to those additional sales. And I read through later where you said that there's no evidence by the appraiser that there were other sales provided to him. Was there any evidence provided by the complainant of the sales that they provided?
Nope, none.
So,
And when I reached out and tried to contact the complainant, I never got a call back from them. So I
okay,
tried to reach them to ask them, in fact, about that, where they talk about they gave additional comps, but it's not clear who they gave the additional comps to, because a lot of times, because the appraiser is not bound to have any communication with the homeowner or, the borrower that are not their client. So if they were going to get some additional comps, it would generally go maybe through the AMC, and then the AMC would say, hey, we'd like you to look at these. There's no indication about that, and I don't think there was anything about that in the report.
okay. That clears that up for me, because it was unclear as to whether or not there was any provided information on the comparables or not. So, and it sounds like there was none.
Nope,
From
I didn't
from
get
the
any.
AMC and lender perspective, this can happen on a pretty frequent basis. So if the homeowner were to provide the lender or the AMC with additional sales, the lender and or AMC would review those sales to see if there's any validity. And it's just the ROV process. If they say there is no validity to this, oftentimes they won't be provided to an appraiser. That's the danger of this ROV process, is that, So
You don't have to be an
high-
appraiser to submit an ROV. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a high likelihood that the complainant did provide them to the lender, but the lender said, I'm not going to pass this on to the appraiser. The appraiser never got them and had never had the ability to address them.
it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. I think that was my questions. I did have another suggestion on because I agree with everything that you said on the issues. I would also suggest that there's a standards 1-5B violation as well as part of the violations, which is to analyze all sales and other transfers of the subject property that occurred within the 3 years prior to the effective date of the appraisal. It took me all of 5 minutes to find out who the complainant was. The complainant is actually the owner of the company that bought the property. That company's listed with the Better Business Bureau under foreclosures, which suggests to me that the 220 sale 3 months prior to this sale was very likely in response to a possible foreclosure process that the seller was going through. So the buyer, who is this REIO LLC, bought it possibly to get the person out of foreclosure, probably paid cash for it, 220 cash, because it was a pre-foreclosure scenario, turned around, because the very first question as an appraiser that I would have asked was, how does it go from 220 to 315 in 3 months if they didn't do anything to the house other than maybe a new roof, right? That would be the very first question in my head. So then I would
Exactly.
start saying, okay, well, who is this REIO LLC company? I would start investigating that as well. That's just my personal thought process as an appraiser,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
like I said, it took me all 5 minutes to find out who they were,
Right.
right? And that it was
No,
under
I
foreclosures.
found all of that too, and there
Yeah.
was no discussion about that in the appraisal report. Let's see, I think I said something about it.
Yeah, so my point being that I think that the appraiser also violated standards 1-5B because the appraiser did not analyze the prior sale.
Mhm.
So let me jump in here just real quick, Kathy. If we're going to add violations or change the compliance report, what the motion would need to be today is to direct Dan to go back and take another look at the case to see if there was a 1.5B issue or if there are additional issues related to reporting and analyzing prior sales. What we can't do is just insert it verbally today in the meeting because
Okay,
the appraiser hasn't had a chance to review that violation and respond to us. So we did have that
Okay.
conversation yesterday. And given the age of the case, it's pretty logical that appraisers evolve over time. And the conversation that we had yesterday kind of indicated to me that the appraiser recognized how poorly done this appraisal was, and that's not where they're at today. However, I do think it's important to give them the information that they need about what went wrong in this and be accurate in terms of what do you need to do in the future. If we don't call them out on it and inform them how that was a problem, they're not going to know for the future that we need to do that. So as far as this compliance report for this case today, 22-2507, what we could potentially do, and I think looking into this issue would take very little time. Correct, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I had talked about it in the report. I just didn't cite it in the citations.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we talked about that in the report because he says they asked him about it and he made a comment about it being an all cash. He thought it was an all cash transaction, but I don't think he ever contacted anyone to verify what was what.
That second
So
half of the required process.
yeah,
So it does sound like that might be important information to get back to the appraiser. And what we could do, what I was getting at in terms of the timeline of going back and looking at the file again and turning around, we could schedule another enforcement committee meeting for the end of this month rather than, or we can wait till next month too. But in terms of just trying to keep the ball rolling, in other words,
Can I make a suggestion on this one? So, Kathy, I totally see your point. And in the interest of expediency, particularly on this one, I think it could be said he did analyze the prior sale.
yeah,
He just did it poorly.
yeah, he talked
So,
about it. That's what I think it was more of a
yeah,
bare minimum type of thing. That's why I highlighted it and talked about it in the PCR. I recognized it myself, but then we're looking for bare minimum things, and so he
right. So
does go in and
it's clear he analyzed it and, calls it out as an all cash sale. His conclusions just were,
I think my definition of analyze.
we lost Kathy.
well,
Kathy frozen.
we'll
Yeah.
we'll give her a minute or two here.
But do you see what I mean on that? I mean, yeah,
I do.
we can.
I do. Yeah, but
Oh,
just by the
quick-
fact that it was
quick-
in
Everybody, one quick question. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Did anybody call in for audio? Gary, did you do that?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, just the only reason I ask is if the public members or the members of the public are allowed to attend these meetings, but given that it's a committee meeting, they're not allowed to interact with you all or defend themselves or ask questions, that kind of thing. It's more of an observer kind of a situation. So, but we need to identify that on record for this record for the public. If there were any non-board folks in the meeting, I would just need to identify them. So that's why I asked.
Want me to shoot a text to Kathy to see if she's able to get back on?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
maybe she could call in.
sure. Oh, looks like she's back.
Sorry,
There we go.
my computer totally just crashed and had to restart. So It's not just the state stuff, apparently.
I'm with you, Kathy. Oi.
Mine will do the same thing when I'm trying to do Teams and look at the documentation at the same time. So, yeah,
That was weird.
that happened
So-
to me at the last meeting, if you'll recall.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what I was kind of saying was, the way I read it was he stated the information about the prior sale, but didn't really analyze it, because if he had analyzed it,
There would have been conclusions.
there would have been a
Yeah.
conclusion, right? And there would have been the next step of, well, if it was a cash sale, why was it a cash sale and how did it go from 220 to 315, right? That's again, that's my thought process as an appraiser and how I would have handled it. But I hear what you're saying, Lori. And if everybody else thinks that the analysis, though very, very minimal, still falls under the definition of analysis, then we can forego
Well, he
any.
did, because if you look at what he said, he talks about, the listing price and when it closed, and then he goes, little to no improvements have been made to the subject since the previous purchase. Change in previous purchase price was due to cash sale, which usually offers discounted prices for cash terms. So there's some analysis.
That's a
Yeah,
pretty big
you're right.
leap for a cash sale.
It is.
Yeah.
100 grand. Wow.
That's a
Yeah,
huge
so
cash
it's-
discount.
Yeah, so there was some analysis in there. Just,
Okay.
it almost looks like a rookie mistake. If you know what I'm talking about, where it's like, well, I'm looking at this prior sale. So instead of flipping it around and saying what was wrong with the prior transaction, he's saying what's wrong with this transaction.
Right.
Because
You're
there's
right.
been no increase in the market according to my data. So
And
that
not,
means
and not enough improvement, physical
Yeah,
improvement.
exactly. So instead of identifying that it was the prior sale that was non-arm's length, or it was arm's length, but it was probably an under market sale, doesn't meet the definition of market value, one would think.
Right.
One other way that we can approach this too, and I'll leave that decision up to you folks. One other way to approach this could be, assuming we move forward and vote on the PCR today, we can have a conversation with the appraiser and inform them. And it wouldn't be in writing, and it wouldn't be like in a settlement agreement because it's not in this compliance report. But there's nothing that says I can't have conversations with our licensees and just, explain how things need to be done a little better. Beyond that, our conversation with this appraiser, it looks very much like we have a situation where we had a supervisor on autopilot teaching people how to be form filler. And that's how you get people that don't recognize, oh, well, that's a weird circumstance. I should look into that further. If they don't do that, if they fill forms out the entire time that they're being an assistant, they're not going to know, to your point, Kathy, what triggers that additional analysis that, oh, I need to dig into that a little further. So it was pretty clear that this licensee could have benefited from a different supervisor.
Right. But it seems to me that Dan has probably had this conversation with this gentleman, and he fully understands
He does.
where he got
We-
into trouble. Yeah.
We had when we give the PCR to the guy, he gets a PCR conference letter, and he gets an opportunity to have a conference with me and Chad, an informal phone conference, or to put a written response. We had an informal phone conference with him yesterday for like an hour and a half. And we talked about all the things. We talked about all the things in the report where there were problems, and, specifically the difference between making a statement and making a summary of an analysis.
I've
And
written
when
entire articles on this topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super important. Yeah.
Yeah.
it is. So
Yeah.
what would you like? So what's the verdict here? Am I gonna go back, or we
No,
good?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Based on our conversation here, I think I'm okay with.
It sounds like Kathy just wanted to make sure that this gentleman knows that that is a standard and that he must follow that standard. I think that he's aware of that without that being included in this particular PCR. So,
Okay.
because that's the basis of the whole thing, don't you think?
Yeah,
Yeah, I tend to spend a lot of time with the appraisers. The interview turns out to be for lack of a better term, a lesson. It's
Yeah.
not me. I hate to sit like I'm on some seat firing down about why didn't you do this and why didn't you do that and you should have done this and you should have done that. Instead, I try and make it more of like an educational endeavor. You know, we talk about things and what we need to be having in our appraisal reports and what we're looking for and things like that. And, you know, I think it's pretty effective. You know, I think that usually they get the message, they understand what's happening. So he was pretty receptive to our discussion yesterday and our advice that we gave him, you know, about making some changes going forward.
Good, yeah, because the credible assignment results, like you said, Lori, hinged on the fact that that piece of it was not fully analyzed, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And not only that, but I think the majority of the big ticket item in this report was the 3-page work file. You can be in compliance with standard 2 and say all the things that you need to say in standard 2 in the report, but if you got nothing to support it, the credibility is greatly diminished, in my opinion.
Agreed.
So
no, we can move forward with voting on the PCR today.
okay, ready for voting?
Looks like
Oh,
Gary had
hold on,
something
everybody.
to say.
Looks like
Question,
Gary's
Ben.
got his hand raised.
Oh,
So he reciprocity license, he didn't come from Oregon. Is that where I'm trying to get to the bottom of where did this entire the person's career go wrong in terms of not understanding simple work file, because it's absolute bare minimum. And I couldn't believe to see the lack of work file in this report. Just can't understand how can there be appraisers out there practicing fully licensed, you know, operating with such
I think
minimal standards.
I think he was originally licensed in California, in Northern California, someplace, if I'm not mistaken. And we talked at length to him about the importance of the work file yesterday in our informal conference. And he's well aware. And in fact, when I was interviewing him in the original interview, he offered to supply a copy of a work file from a case from a recent report to show his evolution. And he turned in a work file from a recent case, and that work file needed work too. and
It
we
was
talked,
better, right?
It was better,
There
for
was
sure.
improved, but
it was more than 3 pages. There was relevant information in it, but there was still no support for adjustments, no support for the opinion of site value. None of those things were still missing. And we talked to him at length about that yesterday. That was the big, like I said, that was the big focus for me is your report is not very credible if you don't have a work file with stuff in it, you know, to support it. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, Gary.
Yeah, the whole point was what I'm trying to understand is where do they get this training? How can their supervisors not be held accountable? Well, take it, he's from us out of state. We don't have jurisdiction over the supervisor, but heck, he's being a Oregon supervisor. Does the board have authority to go back and look at that supervisor again and say, what is going on here? How can you be
100%, yes. The
Yeah,
answer
and
to that
you
is
know where
absolutely.
that comes up. That comes up a lot when we're auditing things, or
Mhm.
when an appraiser that we're investigating was only signing the report, and there was a supervisor who signed the report also, and there's like tons of holes in the report and the work file. We're like, that's on the supervisor.
Mhm. We
So,
have
yeah.
historically had meetings with supervisors when an appraisal was bad enough, and this is in a licensing audit, right? Our gearing towards those audits is not to be punitive. It's supposed to be educational so that everybody's improving and right. So we don't want to be too heavy-handed in an audit, but I've had a few meetings with supervisors because of the quality of work that their assistant turned in as part of their licensing application. The challenge with California, so now Oregon has a vetting process, right? You can't be a supervisor until we look at your work product and verify that it meets at least minimum standards and demonstrates that you're going to be teaching new people the things they need to know to stay out of trouble and stay out of meetings like this. In California, they do not have a vetting process. If you're certified and you take that course, the 4-hour course, you're a supervisor.
Right.
So there's no vetting process. It's can you pass a 4-hour course and then you're free to run amok. That's why Oregon has the audit process for supervisors as well, because I think we can identify a lot of the stuff that's been built into this profession is generational, right? It's systemic, if you want to call it that. Going back to the very first licensees that, when it was the Wild West, and when you pass garbage knowledge forward, it just keeps being the thing, right? So that's kind of what we're also trying to deal with and stop from happening. But yeah, I think in this case, whoever was the supervisor probably shouldn't have been. Based on the conversation with the applicant, with the person in this case.
And do we have any obligation to go back or to reach out to California and say, hey, you guys need to look at this supervisor because their credibility is diminishing the profession, it's diminishing the public's trust in terms of the higher national authority and things of that nature? Yes.
If I could just chime in, no, absolutely not. This was this appraiser's work. Whether or not he was trained properly, we don't know, but maybe he was.
It's an assumption, but
perfectly. Yeah, maybe he was trained perfectly and just chose not to. And but this was this guy's appraisal. It wasn't as though he was acting as a trainee. If he were a trainee, yeah, I mean, I would say so.
Right.
And if there had been a supervisory signature on this, heck yeah, the supervisor would be sitting in front of this board. I think
it's a natural response. I would say 99.9% of the investigations that I've done in talking to the appraiser, my supervisor, they always point to the supervisor. My supervisor never told me about this. My supervisor said this was okay. And guess what? On down the road here in the next couple of months, I get to investigate my supervisor. He got turned in for an allegation.
Well, Dan, we might have to have a conversation about that, actually.
I know, gosh.
That might be one that I end up doing. We'll see, because I don't have any relationship, but we'll talk about that later when it's time, when it comes time for that case. But yeah,
just an example.
And Gary, I get it. My inclination is to want to also reach out to whoever when we run across work that's very subpar and it's clear, like with a new licensee, I'll say that. So hypothetically, if the appraiser before us today in this case had been licensed for 6 months and this got turned in, and right, we're in the same process, but in the context of they were with their supervisor for a year, they got credentialed, it's 6 months later, that is the knowledge that the supervisor gave them, right? They haven't had time to build their own skills further. In those circumstances, and particularly in Oregon's case where we do have jurisdiction, I don't know that there would be any formal case opened, but unless that supervisor, like Lori said, was signing that report and taking responsibility. But I certainly would have an informal conversation with whoever was training folks in a subpar way. And just kind of give them a heads up. And by the way, when we determine that a supervisor's not doing their job, that is a violation of OIR 161 and ORS 674-140. I'm not going to cite the specifics, but we have it in rule and statute that if you're not doing your job as an appraiser, and that includes as a supervisor, you don't get to be an appraiser.
Or
right?
a supervisor.
Or a supervisor by default. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for answering my question.
Just kind of on a side note, Dan and Chad and Kathy, I don't know if you've looked at it either, but this talking about reducing the time frames in which an appraiser, what they wanted to eliminate any time frame. Well, this is
the experience time frame requirement.
Exactly. And so not necessarily reducing the number of hours, but the time over which those hours must be accumulated. But this is one of those one-offs that if you're getting all of your training in 6 months, let's just say, it's very possible that you would never run into this scenario, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I guess even if you had been doing it for a year or two, maybe you wouldn't have, but you'd have a better more of a likelihood. So that kind of solidifies my feelings about our responses to eliminating the you know, the
Well,
experience.
the
time.
criteria proposal,
Yeah,
and you know,
and
the
I
human
know
brain
it's
can
off
only
topic.
absorb so much so fast, right? We're not going to learn everything we need to know to be an appraiser in 4 weeks. That's I sure hope not anyway.
Public
when
trust
you're
definitely comes into question.
You know,
Yep.
when you're teaching a class, like when you're teaching a USPAP class, is something to keep in mind. The most disciplined student has the ability to retain only a certain amount of information, and it's basically your age plus 10 minutes is kind of the guide. So if I'm 50, I can take maybe an hour and I can feel myself filling up with stuff when an hour comes, and I just can't do anymore after that. And I think it's interesting in the classes that I learned that the professor spoke way more than an hour straight to us, you know. So they're trying to tell us that nothing gets through after your age plus 10 minutes, and they go well beyond that when they try and drill it into you. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's true. That's on a micro scale right there. So all right, you guys ready? You want to go? Want to vote?
Let's do it.
Okay. So this is case 222507. And the first one is the record keeping rule.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, next is standard 1, real property appraisal development. Standard rule 13A5.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Next. Standards rule 13B.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Okay. Standards rule 14A.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Okay. Next. 14B1.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
14B2.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
One 4B3.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Okay. Standard 2, real property appraisal reporting. Standards rule 22A10-1.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Standards rule 22A10-5.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Standards rule 22A12.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Very good. Oregon Administrative Rules. OAR 161.025.0060.1.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
And finally, Oregon Revised Statute. ORS 674.140.2.
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Gary.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you
Yeah,
for what
thanks
you
for
do.
this one, Dan. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a lot of,
Good
Thanks.
job.
After we're logged off, I have some updates. So let's get finished with this one and I'll tell you what's coming next.
well, then,
Do we
unless,
have any other discussion on other topics?
not in this context. So
Fair.
unless we wanted to set another meeting date now, which I don't think we usually do, maybe we could adjourn.
I'll shoot an email out to everybody and we can coordinate that offline. Yeah,
Sounds good.
sure. Okay. Is there
Then
a
I would
motion
make
to
a
adjourn?
motion to it. I'll move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Gary, did you second?
Yeah, second.
Okay.
Okay, Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Gary.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. The meeting is now adjourned and the time is 9:41 a.m. Everybody, thank you so much. And give me 2 seconds here to close the record.